self-represented litigant announcement. So attorney announcements first.
Your Honor, I'm Jake Gilbreth. I'm with my associate Logan Glick, and we represent Justin Weed.
Thank you. And then we should have Miss Carrie Weed with us. I see her, but she currently is muted and not on video. So I'm asking her to start her video, and I'm asking her to unmute.
This is Carrie Weed representing myself.
And then can you start your
I've tried.
I'll tell you what, Ms. Weed, I'm going to get started because this is something we should have had worked out by now. We're trying to accommodate you as best we can. We waited several hours for you on Monday, and we're proceeding by Zoom, and the other side agreed to proceed by Zoom to accommodate you. So while you figure all that out, we're going to start. Mr. Gilbreth and his team is going to put on their opening statement. And by the time we get to you, we're going to do your opening statement. I can allow you to sit here, not on video during the pendency of other people's testimony, but I can't allow you to do that when it comes time to your testimony or your questioning of a witness. And so we can go, but you're going to need to figure that out in the next 30, 45 minutes, how to appear on video, if you need to come in on a phone, if you need to come in some other way, but we're going to keep going right now because we need to not delay this anymore, and we're going to move. So, Mr. Gilbreth, why don't you begin with your opening and what you're here to do?
Yes, ma'am. So we're here on Dad's petition to modify. There's the underlying order is a divorce decree from July 30th of 2020 out of this county. The children are Kendall, who is 13 years old, in Case, who is 6. The children are currently at middle school for Kendall and Deary for Case. Before that time, which we'll go through the timeline in just a second, they were at Sycamore Elementary for Case and Sycamore Middle School for Kendall down in Dripping Springs. So just walking through kind of the history. Under the divorce decree, Dad has sort of a step-up schedule. Mom is sole managing conservator. Dad's possessory. There was a protective order in place that has since expired that was affecting the divorce. Dad filed a petition to modify and a motion to enforce on December 8th of 2021. That's the start of this litigation. They eventually had an enforcement hearing, I think in front of Judge Livingston on April 22nd of 2022, who essentially ruled that the divorce decree wasn't specific enough to enforce the obligations of Miss Weed, but she did enter temporary orders in place. And that was kind of the activity in this case in 2022. There's been a substantial amount of activity, though, in 2023 in temporary orders hearings, all butting up with the associate judges and the judges hearing temporary orders butting up against the substantial impairment standard on temporary orders. On temporary orders, as you know, to change custody on temporary orders, the movement would essentially have to show that the children's present circumstances substantially impair the children's physical health or emotional well-being. So the court's not just at a best interest like you are at right now. So they had a hearing. There was a temporary orders motion back in April because there was evidence, although the evidence was still being developed even at the time of the hearing, and I think it's still being developed even today, that the children were missing a great deal of school. The records weren't gathered that time, but now looking at it, it looks like Kendall had missed around 20% of her school days. I think Case had 22 absences. That wasn't developed at the time of the temporary orders hearing. Now that we have school records, it looks like that's what was the case. But the bigger issue that was going on back then, and this is really relevant for today and what's happened recently, is that Mom wasn't telling Dad where she was living. And my client was hearing through the grapevine that she was alleging that her boyfriend at the time, a gentleman named Matthew Morgan, had Kendall. That's what she never told Dad that, but that's what Mom was alleging. There was a CPS investigation at the time of the hearing. The records weren't available.
When you say she was alleging that, but she never told Dad, what is your evidence going to be where she was alleging that? She called CPS?
Yes, but she called the police. There's a criminal investigation. We now have the CPS records. I have her deposition testimony. I'll go through in a second what the allegation was. But that was going on my client was kind of hearing about it. The Judge Arthur, the temporary orders kind of had some evidence about it, kind of not. They had a hearing on April 27th of 2023. Judge Arthur essentially, Mom said, Matthew Morgan's out. She's never gonna be around my children. And Judge Arthur essentially said there's not enough evidence to flip on temporary orders, right? There's school absences, there's just Matthew Morgan, but there's not enough evidence to flip on temporary orders. I wasn't here for any of this. By the way, we now have the CPS records and you'll have them. the CPS records show that mom accused Matthew Morgan of, we just recently got these, by the way. Mom accused Matthew Morgan of both the 12-year-old and the 5-year-old. Mom has a pretty bizarre story as to how she came to that conclusion. According to CPS, she was on a screen. This is just a quote. She was on a screen and didn't select a screen for 2 hours, and that someone hacked into the television. She told me in her deposition a few weeks ago, I felt as though I had perceived something on the screen, and I guess it confused me. I really don't know how best to explain it. I said, what did you see on the screen that confused you? What I thought was my boyfriend doing something with my daughter. Your daughter being Kendall, correct? What do you believe you saw him doing to Kendall? That's the thing. It was like a very funny, fuzzy still image, like very fuzzy still image background perception. It was almost, I'm going to finish in a second, but it's almost as if there was like a chair in the background. I think my issue, well, I've determined that my medication, along with any type of alcohol or anything like that, and lack of sleep or anything external, can obviously, I've had this discussion with my doctor, can impact the kind of your perception. And it was my perception that that's what I was seeing. That's her description today of why she thought Matthew Morgan was being used in the child. CPS records, which again we now have, say that mom is demonstrating a paranoia at a level that is borderline on delusional. Mom insists that her ex-husband implanted, which I guess is Justin, has implanted technology into her and her children, which is causing them to have skin rash systems. Mom has taken the children to at least 3 different hospitals. This is CPS that we're just now very recently, like within the last couple of weeks, getting right back, sort of rewinding back to the Judge Arth hearing in front of April. He didn't have any of this, right? We just had kind of suspicions that something weird's going on. But mom saying, hey, Matthew Morgan's out, right? So that's April of 2023. So mom, and by the way, Mr. Morgan lives down in Montgomery. So mom then breaks up with him, moves back to the Austin area, enrolls the kids in Sycamore Elementary, and then the absences start again. I think the evidence is going to be over 25 absences for Kendall. Problems with case, huge problems with case in school. You'll hear from the school officials today. Mr. Weed thinks, but doesn't know, and now we know from documents that mom gave us that she's taking the children to the hospital all the time. I think for herself, what she told me is 10 different visits to the hospital for herself in 2023, 3 for Kendall, 6 for Case. I've asked her for the record. She hasn't given them to me. But that's all that's going on. So we've got absences again. And so my office makes our appearance on September of this year, September 20th. And there's a temporary orders hearing in front of Judge Arth. And we don't have CPS still at this time. We just made our appearance. We don't have hospital records, which we still don't have, but we do have absences. But then the question is, do these absences rise to substantial impairment, right? And Judge Arth says it doesn't rise to the level of substantial impairment. He does say to mom, and she was represented at this time, she says, if they continue on this line of missed school, you will lose custody of these children. I am almost sure. That's what Judge Arth tells her of this year. So that's in October. I disagree that it's not substantial impairment to have that many absences. We do file a de novo on that. And again, we don't have CPS records. Judge Arth didn't have that during this time. So this is what happens since the October 4th hearing. So Judge Arth says, y'all don't have substantial impairment. We file de novo. Then mom just leaves the children with dad starting October of this year, both children. And she kind of gives this bizarre story that I'm in the hospital. I can't see them. They're with dad for over a month. He ends up having to enroll them in school where they're currently at. You'll hear from the school why they told him he needs to enroll them in Case was having all these issues, hitting kids, choking kids. The school's calling Justin, Mr. Weed, to come and sit in class with Case during this month of this year, which he was doing. Of course, it's like it was a 2-hour drive for him every single day to do it, but that's going on in October this year. Mom later tells me in her deposition, she went to the hospital for bug bites on her legs. I said, well, how long were you in the hospital? She said for 15 days for bug bites on her legs. I asked her to send me those records. She didn't. And so that's October. Kids are now, mom's just gone since the Judge Arth hearing. We had the de novo pending and the kids with Justin, with Mr. Weed. And then November 10th happens. On November 10th, I'm set for my de novo hearing on November 16th. On November 10th, mom just rolls up to the school and takes Case out of school, causes a huge scene, and then tries to take Kendall from her school, and Kendall refuses to go with mom. So mom grabs Case, takes him, doesn't tell anybody where she's going. Judge Arth had one of Judge Arth's order was you got to stay where you live. She hadn't told anybody where she was living. Nobody knew where she was.
How old is Case again? How old's Case?
6.
Yeah.
So she's got Case. Kendall's still with Mr. Weed. We've got the de novo pending, and it's set for the 16th. So we go on Monday and we file a TRO and say, well, you can't disenroll these kids from where they've been going, Cedar Park, right? I didn't think we had enough to say exclude for possession access. I didn't ask for that. but at a minimum, keep the kids where they're at in school, which Judge Connor signed that order. And then we had a hearing on November 16th. We were up here at the courthouse. Miss Weed, of course, shows up at, I think, 10:30 that morning. So we're on standby. I'm talking to her. Where's Case? She won't tell me where Case is. She asked for continuance, which this is kind of when you get involved. We say, oh, continuance is fine because the kids are supposed to go with Mr. Weed for Thanksgiving anyway. And we're set for a temporary orders hearing on Judge Connor's temporary restraining order the Monday after Thanksgiving. So let's just put the kids with Mr. Weed, which is Thanksgiving, his Thanksgiving anyways. Let's have our hearing on November 27th. And where's Case? And where are you living? Won't tell me where Case is, won't tell me where she's living. So we go in front of you. You move it to the 27th. You say you got to say where you're living. You tell her to go get a drug test, which I will say she passes. Now her hair is bleached and she takes Adderall. She told me she takes Adderall and it didn't even show up positive for Adderall. She'll have to talk to us about that. But you move us to the 27th. And that's when we find out Case has been with her the whole week and she hasn't even taken him to school. She just kept him out of school the whole week. And he was actually, found out later, being taken care of by Mr. Morgan that week. And including when she was at the courthouse. And then you say you got to give Mr. Gilbert the address. So she gives the address and she turns the kids over for Thanksgiving. She gives the address and guess what? She's living with Matthew Morgan, the gentleman that she said just earlier this year assaulted both her children. That's where she's living. So we go to our hearing on November 27th. By the way, Dad offers FaceTime with the kids over Thanksgiving. She always misses it. She'll set up their family wizard. She'll just won't show up for the FaceTime visits. Excuse me. November 27th, we're set. Now the mess we have is technically I have my de novo pending, but I also have a motion for additional temporary orders because we've moved in with Matthew Morgan. And we've left the kids with Justin for a month because we went to the hospital for bug bites for 15 days. And so now we're here on November 27th with this trial setting for this week. We don't get reached on the 27th. I talked to Mr. Stokes. It's like, I don't know what to do here because technically I have my de novo. Do I go to duty and get a restraining order? What do I do? So we end up waiving the de novo and say, let's just go forward our additional temporary orders, right? Because since the Judge Arth hearing, we've had moving in with Matthew Morgan. We have dropping the kids off for a month. We have hospital for bug bites. And so we were told by Judge Hathcock's court on the 27th, I'm there with Miss Weed. Y'all come back at 9 a.m. tomorrow. We're going to have a hearing. Judge Hathcock was who called the docket. We talked to Mr. Ybarra, me and Miss Weed both. And the next morning she doesn't show up. And they contact her. I give them her cell phone. They contact her. It's like, well, I have transportation issues. By the way, Mom doesn't work. It hasn't worked, I think, for a couple of years. Doesn't have a vehicle. Before living with Matthew Morgan off and on, she said she was living rent-free at a house of a former employer that was just giving her a favor. Nothing romantic or sexual, but just out of a favor. This gentleman was letting her stay in her house. But anyway, she tells Judge Hathcock's court, I'm not going to be there. So we tell him what's going on. You know, he proceeds with evidence. Mr. Weed testifies. And Judge Hathcock essentially says, look, obviously Kendall's refusing to go to Mom. So he says Kendall doesn't have to go with Mom. The kids will stay in their current schools until y'all have a trial. And he says that she can have a weekend visit with Case. And that was at our request. We said, look, she should see Case. Can't be around Matthew Morgan. But as long as there's an injunction in place that Matthew Morgan not around the kids, because for all we know, we had this allegation that he used the child. Now she's saying he didn't. I mean, it's bad either way, right? I think the evidence is going to be when you talk to Kendall, and also what Kendall has expressed is that Mom told her she needs to stay that Matthew used her. I mean, it's bad whatever way you look at it. Either he did it or Mom made it up or she's delusional like CPS says. It's all bad. And it's all being discovered in, where we can prove it really close to this trial. So anyways, she has a weekend visit between Judge Hathcock hearing it today. She doesn't take it. Just doesn't ask for it. Doesn't take Case as she did before the Judge Hathcock hearing. She had tried to FaceTime Case on what she thought was his birthday. She got his birthday wrong. She was 2 days off and she was at a bar when she did FaceTime with him. Last Wednesday, when she FaceTimed with the kids, she had Matthew Morgan on the FaceTime with her and tried to get the children to talk to Mr. Morgan. And she didn't take her weekend between now and then. And then, of course, Monday, her knowing that we're up here asking, she has our pretrials. She knows that we're asking that the kids live primarily with Justin. We're asking that Kendall be allowed to set her own schedule, which I typically wouldn't ask for a child this age, but I don't know what else to do with it, particularly with Mom living with Matthew Morgan. We're asking that she have a standard that Dad, they can either be joint managing. They could be sole. I mean, we could ask for Dad to be sole managing. There is a prior protective order in place, so the court doesn't have to pick which. It doesn't say that automatically means Mom's sole, but you could say one parent has to be sole. That's what the family code says. It may make more sense for these folks to be joint managing conservators, but Dad make the decisions for the kids. She knows we're asking for all that. And then, like we talked about on Monday, she doesn't get to, not even going to court on time. She doesn't call until 8:45. She calls me saying that she's running late. Right when your children are at stake. And it's not there's a car wreck or anything like that. It's just I got moving late, right? That's kind of where we're at. right now. I mean, this case is not fleshed out. I mean, it's been a process to flesh it out. Like I said, we just recently got CPS records. I still don't have the hospital records that mom said she'd send me. I have no idea why she's gone to the hospital so many times. I have no idea what the hospital records are going to say as far as her going to 15 days in this month for bug bites. From what she told me, I don't know what's going on with Mr. Morgan. I've got conflicting stories. I've got mom telling Judge Arth he'll never be around my kids, and he sexually assaults my kids 8 months ago, and now I have her saying he's just fine. And I made it up, or is delusional or something like that. Of course, the kids have been, I assume, told you're not going to be around Matthew Morgan anymore. And now she's living with him and FaceTiming when having him on the FaceTime calls. It is unabashedly, I'll say it is a mess. Judge Arth said it's a train wreck. We've had some, and I can't just go in here on temporary orders because I have this substantial impairment burden that you don't have at final trial. At final trial, it's just best interest. Clearly, there's been a material and substantial change in circumstance. Both sides have alleged that, by the way. And so it's a best interest issue, and that's what I've got. I've got teachers. I also have a day announcement because it's just we're so desperate to get. I have to get reached or some judicial intervention on this. Compound that, frankly, with my scheduling issues this afternoon that we talked about on Monday. I mean, and I am trying to accommodate Miss Wheat. Like she is pro se, and she has been for a couple of weeks. There's lots of things that I could be complaining about. I sent discovery, no responses. In her deposition, I asked her to send me some records. She's informally hasn't done. Obviously, she didn't file pre-trials. She didn't do her 30-day out disclosures. I mean, that's kind of expected. But that's where we're at. And then I do want to sort of talk about what we do with this afternoon because I do have a conflict. But that's where we're at. That's the mess that I have. I think clearly the best interest is that the kids live with Justin. By the way, the evidence will be the kids are doing very well now. They have their counselors. Mr. Wheat takes them to a counselor. Unfortunately, it's the type of counselor that makes you sign something that says you're not going to pull me down to court. But they see a counselor, they're going to school, they're attending school. I think when you talk to Kendall, she's going to say she feels a lot safer with dad. I think she is going to tell you at mom's house there's been problems with there being food or them sleeping in a car. Obviously, she'll tell you about what happened with Matthew Morgan and all that. It's a problem. These kids are in a great deal of distress. I don't fault what the associate judge has done on temporary orders because I'm sitting here right now, been on the case just for a few months, and I'm still trying to gather information and figure out what's going on. But this is the posture I'm in. I think I told you on Monday, if mom was represented, I'd slap a Band-Aid on it and get us through the holidays and try to develop this stuff more. But that's the box I'm in, right? Temporary orders, final information rolling in. It's really disturbing though, the information that we do have. And I don't have a good answer on a possession schedule for Kendall. I'm not sure I have a good answer for a possession schedule.
That was a lot. I know it's just a lot. It's a lot happening in real time kind of, but the children right now, their school is kind of getting out this week, right? I think probably everywhere. Where are they physically? Are they living in dad's house this week and going to school? Where are they at school right now?
So Kendall, I think we have on she didn't have any tests or any parties today. So we just have Kendall on standby. Case is in school and they have been with dad actually even before October. Kendall was with dad and the case has been with dad exclusively other than that little period before Thanksgiving with mom.
Is this her last day of school before break or does she have one more day after this?
I don't know. Mr. Wee would have to answer that.
So does she want to go to school today? Do I need to talk to her now? Or are we going to talk to her later?
I can talk to her right now, Your Honor.
And then is this her last day of school or is this?
No, ma'am, Friday.
Okay, well then I don't need to talk to her right this second then. I didn't want her to miss the last day of school. She doesn't have any tests today.
No, ma'am.
It sounds like she's missed a heck of a lot of school. And so I'm not comfortable with her kind of missing for this, but if we don't think there was anything today and they're just like walking the track, which is what middle schoolers do the last week of school and watching movies, then I'm not too worried about it. But if you want to get her to school, then I'm happy to go ahead and interview her here soon and then we can get her to school. But I can also wait for Mr. Gilbreth, your schedule, whatever you think. But it won't take long to interview her, probably 15, 20 minutes, really.
Yes, ma'am. If you could, so I could get her to school, I would appreciate that.
Okay, well then I might, I'm going to listen to Miss Weed's opening if she has any. She's here, but why don't you go ahead? If Frenchie, well, we already have her, right? So what I'll do is while y'all are all here, I'll bring her I'll ask when we're done with opening, I'll do that first. I'll go ahead and interview her and talk to her this morning and then we can get her to school.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but let me finish with opening and see if Miss Weed wants to present an opening. And then when I'm talking to her too, everybody can get off except for her. And Ms. Weed can maybe work on getting a video working if she wants to present evidence today. Ms. Weed, opening statement from you. Would you like to say anything this morning with regard to an opening statement?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. The only thing that I would like to say is, I guess more or less, that the children have been through quite a lot. I apologize for the noise in the background. The children have been through quite a lot in the last several months. It's not, I'm trying to start my video right now and it's not cooperating. So I don't know if it's an issue with my cell phone or if it is, there we go. Okay, so the children have been through quite a lot. A lot of the facts and information that Mr. Gilbert presented is accurate. There are some of those facts that are not as accurate as stated during the depot, like as after or through his deposition for me. But I would say that as far as my mental health and stability is being called into question is not so much the concern. My children have missed a lot of school, even under Mr. Weed's household residence. He claims to have them at his home alone and has misrepresented a lot of the facts as to where my children have been. I have continuously, after being in the hospital and voluntarily taking some time to take care of myself and my mental health and well-being, which was not 15 days as was suggested, and was not stated to have been the truth during my deposition with Mr. Gilbert. I most certainly took a few days and then tried to get my children back. And as you can see on the app through the Our Family Wizard app, as was ordered through the court through Judge Arth, there was communication as to me trying to get my children back. And Mr. Weed continuously tried to block that and interfere with me taking possession back. And my children have never slept in a car, in a vehicle, not once. Mr. Morgan is not the one that cares for my children. When I had them and before things were, before I had, I guess, an episode, we could refer to it as, I had them at school on time. I was working. I was a single parent. Child support was coming in late. There were a lot of issues. There were a lot of other issues. Mr. Weed continuously has tried to interject himself in my life, has hacked my technology, has proven through another court, through another case, a felony case that is pending through Travis County for Mr. Weed. He has interjected himself into my life and tried to bully Mr. Morgan, and then also play him to be play both sides of the fence with Mr. Morgan. He has contacted my family members and tried to destroy my reputation. And as far as, I did hold a job. My current or my previous employer from Dripping Springs was assisting us as we were new back in the area in Austin, and I did not have employment and was looking for help. So Mr. Weed has alleged that there's like some type of, I don't know, some that I'm doing something with my children. I've done everything that I could do to protect them, report them when I felt like I had a concern to do so, which ended up not being a valid concern, I would say, because CPS cleared Mr. Morgan, which is why I'm back in his household residence and we are living together. And I guess that's all I have for now. Mr. Weed, my last
question. What do you want? I know what Mr. Gilbert wants. He wants his client to be primary. And but what do you want? Because it does sound like you've been even under your, I don't know what's all going on. But it does sound like you have moved many counties over. You've had some struggles getting your kids to school. You've had some physical and mental health struggles. And so what do you want is my question.
My concern for my children living with Mr. Weed as primary is that he's a known drug user, which was stated with the in the previous hearing with Judge Arth. He wears a sweat patch, has several domestic violence cases. And my concern is that my children go to, or my son is reported to have been in school, harming children, choking children, strangulating children, like acts of violence that's never been.
Well, I have a lot of concerns here too, and there are concerns, and well, I'm sure you'll put on your evidence of Mr. Weed's concerns, but what do you want? Like, that doesn't help me much. I'm asking what you kind of want. Can you sit here today and say you're asking to continue to be primary or sole even with these kids, and that you can get them to school, because you really haven't shown that for the last 4 to 5 months.
You should, and nor has he, in the time that he's had them. But yes, I absolutely could get them to school. I absolutely would get them to a counselor that would be happy to speak with a court, first off, or to the opposing, or to the other
Okay, so
parent.
you're asking for a what? I mean, legally, that's really where I'm going. It's not a conversation. It's a legal question. What are you asking for legally? Are you asking for there to be a modification and some changes to the schedule, or are you asking no modification?
No modification. He's, I think, first, third, and fifth. He's willing to either, as of the concerns, or as for his concerns laid out, he's willing to take joint managing conservatorship and isn't so worried about their safety on the one hand, but then child support, I'm sure, is going to change. It's all, I mean, to me, first, third, and fifth. I would like to be sole managing conservator. There was never a concern until I met up with him in November, and then my entire life changed after that.
This November or last November?
Last November.
Okay.
My
This
children.
has been going on a while. It's been going on for longer than a month.
No, right. It was a year. Right.
A year. All right. Thank you.
Yes, when he came to my residence.
All right. Well, then let's do this. Now I've had opening. I think I know somewhat what both sides are doing. I appreciate the fact that you can now see you, Ms. Weed, and this will be fine to proceed this way.
Yes, ma'am.
But I think what I'll do is I'll do my conference first. Let's do that at 10 a.m. So we'll hang up, everybody disconnect. Y'all will all be back at 10:20, and we'll go at 10:20, but I'll talk to Kendall. Everybody else hangs up. Kendall comes in, and then y'all all show back up at 10:20. How does that sound, everybody? Okay?
It sounds
Yep.
good.
Okay.
Will I have an opportunity to speak with Kendall?
No, you do not. This is a conference that I do with Kendall, not
Okay.
y'all. Nobody else comes.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
And then y'all come back in at 10:20. And then Mr. Gilbreth, when do you need to leave? I can go into lunch a little bit. We start at 10:20 and we pick up with your first witness. When should we break?
I mean, honestly, I've never asked for accommodations, but I do need to leave by 2. The school play starts at 2:30.
Okay, well, I don't know if I can go that late. So I might go, maybe we can go to like 1 today, and then we'll break for lunch at 1. And then we'd get started back at like 2:30. But I think you said Ms. Glick can do it for a little bit.
Well, for like school witnesses and stuff like that, I can have them, but
I mean, I don't know or we could just, I don't know. It's difficult, but I can't have my staff work that long through lunch. Sorry.
I'm not asking for that. Are we trying? I'll just be frank. I mean, do we have other times this week? I mean, to finish the hearing. I mean, it's difficult for me to see finishing by 5 o'clock today.
Yeah. I mean, if we can't finish by 5 o'clock today, I might have to come back that first week of January. We might have to kind of hold the hearing until then. I don't know what we're going to do over Christmas. If that's the case, I don't know if there's going to be chaos over Christmas. So I don't really know.
I think we'll have a better, hopefully after talking to Kendall, you may have a better sense of that, because that would be my preference. Because I was here on Monday, right? And
I couldn't have gone on Monday anyway. You saw I had 3 cases that wasn't those cases. And so when we set things this week, we run into this, but I do have another case tomorrow another long docket case. That's a 3-day case that I'm starting on Thursday and giving them 2 days. And so I don't know what's going to happen. If they show up and don't need the time, y'all could possibly come back tomorrow, but my guess is they may need all 2 days. So that's just the week.
My request for you to think about then would be that, we work however long, but that we take our school witnesses, I have 1 that wants to go this morning, 2 that want to go this afternoon, do them, see how much we can be done with that, get through that, but then that we break today at 2 o'clock would be my request.
Yeah. And then we may have to just come back in January, because we don't have dockets next week. It's Christmas. And then that first week I'm duty court. So it might even be into that second week. I'm sorry, but I think that might be where we are, the week of January 8th. So that's just what's possible.
What does that mean for Christmas for?
We'll have to figure that out. I'll have to enter some sort of TRO or interim orders for Christmas. But I'll have to hear from y'all on that.
Yes, ma'am.
I know we got to reach this case, but we also have to reach other cases too. And so, yeah, I'm not going to make you go back to the central docket. I'll figure out something on my calendar, but it may not be finished today or tomorrow or anytime
Yes, ma'am.
this week. Okay, well, let's hang up and then Mr. Weed, you facilitate Kendall being here in 10 minutes and I'll talk with her and then I'll see everybody else back at 10:20. And let's take your school witness at 10:20, the one that's available. We'll do that one first. Ms. Weed, remember, if you're going to ask questions, you're going to need to be on video. But at this time, we will go back on the record. And Mr. Gilbert, I believe your witness is in the courtroom, but you may call your next witness at this time.
Susan Carroll. And so first, oops, I'm sorry, may I share screen?
I need to give you permission, and I am doing so at this time. You now have it.
Thank you, ma'am. First, I would offer Petitioner's Exhibit 12, which is all of the Dripping Springs ISD records pertaining, all the Dripping Springs ISD records in Petitioner's Exhibit 13, which is the notice of the filing of the business records affidavit, which has been on file since November 15th. So I'd offer Petitioner's 12 and Petitioner's 13.
12 and 13 are hereby admitted.
And I'm an elementary school counselor here in Dripping Springs at Sycamore Springs Elementary.
And how long have you been doing that work?
I've been at this school in this district for just this past year, but I've been an elementary school counselor for 16 plus years. I met him at the beginning of the year. He was one of our students, and I work with all students. I go into every classroom to teach lessons, and then I also pull kids out who need additional support. And Case happened to be one of those kids that needed extra support this year.
When did it come to your attention that he needed extra support?
I think pretty early on in the year, he routinely came to school late. And so I would get a call from our front office staff to come meet him at the front of the school. And so I would escort him every day to class. He was generally an hour or so late in the morning.
And is it your understanding that this is during a time period that he was living primarily with his mom?
Yes, that's correct.
And so how often are we talking about Case being late?
I would say every day that he came to school, he arrived anywhere from 9 to 10 in the morning.
And what time is the final bell?
7:45.
And this is always mom taking him to school, is that right?
Yes.
And then also during this time period where he's living primarily with his mom, how many absences did Case have?
On average, he was here maybe 2.5 days a week.
And then the other days absent?
Yes.
Excused absences, unexcused, if you know?
It's a little complicated because if he comes after 9 o'clock, I believe he's just absent for the day. We take official attendance, I believe, at 9 in the morning. So when he misses those days, or when he comes that late, he's already marked absent.
And let me show you what's marked as Petitioner's Exhibit 5, which is an excerpt from the records. And this is an excerpt of Petitioner's Exhibit 12, so I'd offer Petitioner's 5.
5 will be admitted too. It's fine to admit it separately. It's fine.
And man, so Case, is this during a time period where he's living with mom where we're looking at 22 unexcused absences and 8 tardies? Is that right?
That's correct.
Now, and then did you ever have a conversation with mom during this time period about why Case is either so late or absent and essentially doing 2.5 days? And that's supposed to be clear, that's 2.5 days out of the 5 days. Is that right?
Right. Correct. My understanding was that our assistant principal had that conversation with her. And so as a result, we offered special transportation services. So we had someone coming directly to her house, or we offered to have someone come pick him up. But my understanding is she declined. She wanted to bring him herself. But that same transportation did bring him home in the evening. So that was outside of our normal busing system. We had a special driver taking him.
And when was it that mom was offered that accommodation to have somebody pick up Case and bring him to school?
That was pretty early in the year, I believe.
And after she declined, I think the records speak for themselves, but after she declined that accommodation, did Case continue to have the problems with being late or being absent?
Correct.
What other issues was Case going with during this time period that he was staying with his mom primarily?
There were times that he had challenging behaviors at school. He would put hands on other students. He would get really frustrated or upset, and I would have to come support him in the classroom to help him to calm down or to regulate. So that was happening while he was with mom.
And was there a safe school threat assessment that was done
There
for
was.
Case? When was
Yes.
that?
It was while he was with mom, I would say. In
Well, let me just show you his petitioners. Yeah, his petitioners 41, that safe school assessment.
yes, that's correct.
Offer petitioners 41.
41 is admitted.
And so, ma'am, and you see how it says the created date is September 27th of 2023. Did you participate in this assessment?
Yes, I did.
And 17 pages without having to necessarily walk through each and every one. What are the various concerns contained in the assessment for Case?
Essentially, he was making threats to other students, threats to harm, and he had, put hands on students. He had knocked some kids down to the ground. He had thrown a bunch of materials and supplies off desks and tables in the library. I believe he pushed some chairs over, pushed some staff.
There's a comment in here about, did the school attendance have an effect on Case's behavior? You see this note says inconsistent school attendance makes it difficult to build relationships.
Correct.
Um,
Well, I think that was difficult for him because we recognized that was a trigger for him when he came late to school. He didn't like to be on display, and when he came late, kids would often get really excited and they'd say, "Hey, Case is here, and they would stop what they were doing and all the attention would go to him. And at one point a little girl came up and hugged him because she was excited, and so that resulted in him, I can't remember if he shoved her or he punched her. There was something physical that happened. And so I believe we did share that with mom, the importance of him getting here to school on time. And that was one of the reasons I would take him to class, so that to help with that transition.
This note, can you explain kind of what was going on? What's led to this note? It says unstable housing, may lose housing again within the next week. Mom has not followed through with obtaining outside supports for student and has not agreed to a full educational evaluation per school's recommendation. What's kind of the background for that note?
We have a licensed mental health professional, a therapist on site at school. And she offered to take mom, I believe, to maybe on 3 different occasions to a mental health for resources, just to get counseling and support for herself, for Case. And I believe maybe she was sick 1 or 2 of those times, but so that was offered, but it didn't happen. And then the other part that we offered an FIE, a full individual evaluation for special education, just because the behaviors were so egregious and consistent. And so we wanted to see, and we're just supporting them through our general education system. And so we wanted to see if there was something more going on, if he had a learning disability or what else may be contributing to the behaviors, so that we could potentially support him through our special education system, which could offer him more individualized supports. But mom declined that at that time.
And I want to talk about October, go through the rest of this. So kind of what happened in October of this year. Whenever during this time, have you ever invited the parents to come to school and talk about a behavioral implementation plan?
Yes.
When was that?
We had met with mom and talked to her about how to support Case, early on in the year. And I don't, we did a behavior support plan, I think maybe the middle or end of October. And I think maybe that's when Dad was involved.
Yeah, so if I represent to you that the children were after an October 5th hearing, that Case was living with Dad. After that time, did you invite Dad to the school to go with a behavioral implementation program with Case?
Yes.
Had you tried to reach out to Mom about coming into the school around that time as well?
Earlier, we had tried to, right around the time when we were informed that she was about to lose housing, the end of like the beginning of October. Case was very unsettled and very dysregulated and really worried about that. Worried if is mom going to be, does she have food? Does she have a house? Do we have a house? Where's my stuff? That's all he could focus on. And so I was supporting him throughout most of the day. And I believe that was when he had one of his bigger episodes, behavioral episodes. And so we reached out to mom to let her know that he was really struggling at school today. We understood that she may be losing housing within the next couple of days. And I believe that's when we were trying to do the threat assessment. And we asked mom to come to school. And she said that she would be here, but she never showed up. And so we let our school resource officer know that we had concerns about mom's welfare. So they went to her house to check on her and to let her know, the school's waiting for you to come. Case is really struggling today. They need you there. And we were told her response was, I'm not feeling well today and he's safe at school. And so that was, I believe, the last time that I heard from her and at school, or the last time we saw her for the most part.
Until the transition in October 2023 to with Dad, Case being with Dad and the school working with Dad. Is that fair?
Right. So that was the first day that I had met Dad. So when she didn't come, we waited a few hours, or a couple hours, and our assistant principal reached out to Dad and he came, as soon as he could. And then that's when he took Case home for the day after we went through, the behaviors and everything. And so that's, I never had any other additional contact with her.
And when you say he came as soon as he could, Dad came that day to
yes, that day. Yeah.
Just on the issue of mom and housing, did mom fill out what's called a Vento form with the school?
McKinney Vento. Yes, that's my understanding.
In his Petitioner's Exhibit 7, that form that she would have filled out. Is that correct, ma'am?
Yes.
Offer Petitioner 7.
7 is admitted.
And what is the purpose of this form?
This is just to recognize that that currently housing is unstable. And so the law is we need to, there's special accommodations that, they may enroll and disenroll and re-enroll. There's no penalty. They may go from school to school. There's no penalty. They have free and reduced lunch. Sometimes, they're connected with, extra transportation, like in his case. So it's just some additional provisions or safeguards.
And then this would be mom's handwriting when she says, my previous employer is currently paying for housing. You see that?
Yes.
Okay. So back to the sort of transition to where Dad's called. What starts happening as far as intervention for Case in October of this year when he's with Dad and Dad starts, when y'all start reaching out to Dad? So
once Dad got involved, I think we had pretty much daily communication and daily contact with Dad from the day that Dad took over. Case came to school every day before he arrived by 7:30 or sometimes sooner. My understanding is he was here on time every day. He may have missed one day. I think he was out with not feeling well. So his attendance changed drastically once he went with dad. But at the same time, the behaviors increased because every day, at least the first couple of weeks he was with dad, he kept thinking that mom was picking him up, because the last he had seen mom, she dropped him off at school, never came to pick him up. And so every day we would see him, he thinks mom's out looking for housing. She's going to come get me today. She's going to come get me today. And then dad would show up and he would just be distraught. So that went on a good couple of weeks where he was just so dysregulated that we could not even keep him in a classroom. So he was with me for a lot of the days. We had as many as like 12 different staff members supporting him throughout the week. We had a whole schedule of interventions and supports, and basically his day was just to keep him calm and to keep him safe. And so then after a couple weeks, he had calmed down somewhat enough that we could try to put him back in the classroom with some additional, one-on-one supports all day. But and we didn't have him in there all day. It was too much for him. And he still struggled with the behaviors in the classroom. And so there are days, dad came in to observe and to watch. And so.
Was that at the school's request that dad come in and observe?
Yes.
Did he show up each and every time the school asked him to come observe or be in the classroom?
Yes, he did.
And so how often did that happen in the month of October?
I believe he was in the classroom at least a couple of times. But we either had communication with him or I saw him at drop off or pick up pretty much daily.
And how was Case with his dad when you saw him interact with him?
Initially he was scared. He said, I want to go with my mom. But over time he warmed up and he seemed excited to see his dad. But initially he was still longing for his mom and where she at. Is today the day? Is today the day?
And then, so how did his behavior, did it, as with dad being in the school and the intervention and stuff, did Case's behavior improve at Sycamore Springs?
There were days that he was more calm. After the first 2 weeks was really hard. It was all day long. He was dysregulated. Then after that, he started to settle in, but there were still blips of, he just struggled. He had a hard time. There were a lot of triggers in the classroom. He thought, other kids were looking at him or picking on him, or it was hard. It was a big transition for him.
I want to ask you if you've reviewed it or not, but part of Case's file is looking at prior assessments for him. Had you seen in his file, and first of all, this is part of the Dripping Springs record, so I'd offer Petitioner's 37.
37 is admitted. We can do it that way.
And so, ma'am, this references, it looks like in April of 2023, if you've ever had a conversation with Case or talked to him, that he was having, you understand that in April 2023, he was also living primarily with mom. Is that your understanding?
Yes. And I wasn't at this school. So that was last spring, correct?
Have you ever had a conversation with him? And if you haven't, then, but have you seen in his record that he thought that something was biting his brain back in April of this year?
No.
Had Case ever expressed stuff like that this school year?
No.
So what's your understanding? What's your understanding of what led to kind of this transition to where Case currently is? Elementary.
The behaviors had escalated so much, and we were calling dad frequently for support, or and it, he was 45 minutes away, and it, sometimes it took a while to get here. Sometimes he wasn't always able to pick him up, right at 3 o'clock after school. And so it was a lot. And given that Case seemed to be having a hard time getting back into his classroom with his peers. He thought people were picking on him, and he just wanted to, in his words, he wanted to attack everyone in there, or a lot of students in there. And so we thought, maybe a better solution for him is just to kind of have a restart and go into a new school that's closer to where they're living, so that the commute wouldn't be an issue, and Dad would be more readily available, and he would have a whole new cohort and just kind of start over.
And so after that recommendation from the school, is it you understand that the child then transitioned to elementary?
Yes.
And how'd that transition go, just from your perspective?
I checked in with the counselor just, early on, just to let them know the supports we've been providing. And I think the first day or so was rough, but it sounded like he had settled in. He was ready. He was able to be in a classroom all day. I think they're providing supports, but it sounded like he had calmed down quite a bit.
Is it your understanding that he has all his attendance, like perfect attendance rate?
I'm not aware of his attendance there.
And as far as just where you left off with Case, educationally speaking, what would be the recommendation for what needs to happen as far as any evaluations or accommodations or what have you for Case?
So we had recommended the FIE, given the current situation, but if he is, thriving at the new school, if he's settled in, if the behaviors are no longer happening, if he's able to access the curriculum and be engaged, and he's on, grade level, then it may not be still necessary at this time.
And one thing I forgot to ask, during this time in October, where Case, this first 2 weeks that are really rough for Case, did he seem concerned about his mom as far as safety or, what's going on with her? What was Case's attitude during that time?
Yes. He was very worried about her. He mentioned a number of times, where's my mom going to sleep? Where's she going to live? Where's our house? What's going to happen to our house? What about all of our stuff? What are we going to do with all of our stuff? And, yeah, he talked about that quite a bit.
Oh, and to be clear, I think this whole time period that we're talking about has been this school year starting August 17th, right?
Correct.
Okay, I'll pass the witness.
All right, Miss Weed, if you have any for this witness.
I do. So, hi, Miss Carol. How are you today?
Hi, good. Thank you.
Okay, so you had mentioned that as for being late, do you have any information or any knowledge as to a conversation or any email communication that I had with this at the school district level? And this would have been, I guess, at the end of last school year, as to some of the behavioral concerns as they pertain to the school, the classroom itself, the children, the teacher, and overall, like the administrative staff, and having set up kind of a norm of me bringing Case in late, meeting in the front office, them checking his backpack as part of like I wouldn't say a formal individualized education plan, but more or less kind of like what we set up as like a protocol for safety.
I'm sorry, Miss Weed, before Mr. Gilbreth even objects, which he would here in a minute, I got to stop you. You need to ask questions, not give testimony. And so it's just too long. It's too complex of a question. I know you're setting it up, but now is not the time for you to tell your story. Now is the time for you to ask Miss Carol questions that are compact enough to where she can understand it. So turn it around, ask a question.
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor. Were you privy to any of that type of communication as to the protocol for Case after his behavioral concerns?
Regarding this year, or are you talking about last year?
Both. At
So
the start of the year.
So I wasn't here last year, but at the start of the school year this year, I was aware that there was a threat assessment that had been done last year. And so part of the protocol is just to check backpacks, for the first couple of days. And so that was just, the first couple of days, and that was it.
Okay. And do you have any knowledge as to, or I guess, were you privy to any of the communication as to determining whether or not Case is on a good mental health day and whether it would be advised or appropriate to keep him home from school? Is that something that you've ever had, like that you at the school district level would ever kind of work out with a parent if he wasn't he was not having a good day? Did we have a conversation as to keeping him home for certain days? I guess
I'm not quite sure what the question is.
Do you recall him having been sent home and then it being requested that he stay home for certain days?
I don't recall that we've requested that he stay home for certain days. There were days where he had harmed other students, and we had the administration had called you in, and he may have gone home early a couple of days.
And then was asked to stay home for the member. Do you recall having given us construction paper and some material to kind of work out some emotional distress?
Yes. I mean, I did give him some supply, like some feelings, buddies, workbooks and things. But I don't know. That's an admin question, I think,
Okay.
for Ms. Brown, as regarding how many days he was asked to stay home.
Okay. Thank you for that. So you also discussed his emotional and behavioral outbursts or concerns as to his violence in the classroom and his fearfulness of his father. So was there ever a report made to the staff there at Dripping Springs ISD as to an exchange? Did Case ever make a report or an outcry as to his father having harmed him, put him in a negligent or unsafe situation? And then what was the follow-up or the behavioral outburst to that, if you recall?
So when he would say that he was scared of dad, and I asked, what does that mean? What's scary to you? He just said, well, he's just rude sometimes. So I never got a sense that, he was being harmed or he was neglected or he was unsafe. He just felt like he was rude. And I said, does he talk loud or is he? And he's like, no, he's just rude. So, and the only thing that I could gather was that, he was rude. He made him, change his clothes or put on shoes or get up and go to school, or so just he had these expectations of him. And so I think that's what he's calling, he was just rude and didn't like that.
Okay, thank you. As listed in that, I'm sorry, what was that exhibit referred to as? I'm not certain as to the exhibit, but in that exhibit, it states the report made by Case as to an exchange in a convenience store. Do you recall us having, you and I in Case having,
Yes.
and Ms. Brown, can you speak on that, please?
He said something, he said, well, my dad took us to the convenience store and he was trying to have someone give money to someone to buy me or something. So we couldn't get the context of that. And yes, we had that conversation with you as well, Ms. Brown and myself. And so that's really the only context that I had about that.
But, and the behavioral outburst that led to us having received that information from Case, do you recall on what day his, was it a strangulation? Do you recall what it was? Because I was called to the school to meet with you all, including Case, and then it was requested that I keep him home after that. So do you recall, did he punch a child? Did he throw chairs? Do you recall that information?
I don't know the exact date. I mean, I'd have to refer to my notes. I don't know the exact dates of various behaviors. I just know that there are frequent behaviors. And when they rose to the level of him being unsafe, that's when our assistant principal would reach out to you or dad. And at times, you'd be asked to go home early for the day. So
Was it ever at that point in time, did the thought ever cross your mind, or was it ever discussed at the school district level that maybe Child Protective Services or Department of Family Services be contacted and communicated with in regards to any of that?
to the comment about dad in the convenience store.
Right, in exchange for money to buy a child, and him having left alone in the restroom, and not being able to find his father. Mm-hmm.
It didn't rise to that level of like where he seemed to be neglected or abandoned.
Okay. And also, so the discussion about, or cases concerns about housing, in your opinion, is it a norm for a 5-year-old? He was at that point in time 5 years old. Is it a norm typically to for it to be so prevalent in a 5-year-old's mind as to where his home is or his residency, or if the school district wasn't the one communicating that to him, do you have any knowledge as to where that was coming from, the prompting of housing and his like housing stability or anything like that? Was that something that was discussed by you with Case?
That was brought to my attention by Case. He would come to school, and I, when I would do, check in with him, walk him to class, and he would be really upset. And I would say, wow, it looks like you're really upset today. What's going on, Case? And he would say, my mom, we have to move. We have to move. My mom's not going to have a place to live. We have to move out of our house. She's moving today. So that's where that information came from.
Okay, I appreciate that. He still does that, which have housing. So just wanted to mention that. When you say that the reports as to the missed, I guess, attendance, did the school district ever receive any school notes from doctor's appointments, hospitals, anything like that? And circling back to what Mr. Gilbreth was asking you about the biting on his head, that wouldn't have been something that the school district had. That came from the hospital. He reported that to the hospital. So put that aside. But did you all ever receive any type of school notes to your knowledge? Would you have that?
That would be if we received any medical excuse or doctor's notes, that would be with the registrar.
Okay. And the registrar's name?
I don't know if it's Karen Thornton that does that. I'm not sure who does the attendance. And
okay, thank you. And then I guess my final question is, let's see. I guess that's really all I have. I mean, I guess educationally and academically, was Case, when you met with him, does he seem to be behind the curve in regards to his intelligence and IQ level, his vocabulary? What were your perceived thoughts as when you put the emotional disturbances aside? I mean, as far as where he meets the expectation level, as far as, those things. Could you speak on that?
So our school didn't do any assessments with him, so I can't speak on where he's at as far as academic levels. And I don't know that we were able to capture a lot of that data, given his number of absences. So I think, and I believe there may have been a report card, but I don't know that there's a whole lot of information on there, just given his absences.
Okay. And just meeting with him, I mean, what were your thoughts just meeting with him?
Was he on grade level? I can't speak to that.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your time and best of luck to you.
Mr. Gilbreth, do you have any other questions?
No, ma'am.
All right, Ms. Carroll, thank you for your time. If you're released from your subpoena, if you are under one, you are released from any other orders from the court and you are free to go. So you can disconnect to the Zoom. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Everybody else. So your next witness, Mr. Gilbreth, will be your client, or is it going to be somebody else?
It would be my client. I have two school professionals that requested this afternoon.
But what time did they want to come this afternoon?
Could Ms. Glick speak to that? She's been the one coordinating with them.
I have the school counselor for Kendall requesting to come at 3, and then the assistant principal said she can come anytime in the afternoon. So whatever works for the court, and I'll communicate with both of them.
Okay, well, we will go with Mr. Weed, but let's take a 15-minute break and then we'll start with Mr. Weed at 11:30. And it looks like, and so at this time, we'll go back on the record. Mr. Gilbreth, you may call your next witness.
Well, Justin Weed. And I want to start before we get into kind of your background and everything. I want to show you, just dovetailing off something that Ms. Weed said in her opening statement. Did I take Ms. Weed's deposition in this case? Do you recall that?
Yes, sir, you did.
And petitioner's 19 is Ms. Weed's deposition. And I'd offer petitioner's 19.
Petitioner's 19 is admitted.
Just going through where Ms. Weed said this morning that she was not in the hospital for 15 days. Were the children, October this year, were the children in your sole care in October of 2023?
Yes, sir.
And I'm just going to read to you what Ms. Weed says when I say, where were you staying? And you see where she says, I went to the hospital for a period of time. Then I stayed with my mother. Then I was here. And she says she went to St. David's. You see that?
Yes, sir.
Had she told you that the reason why she was in the hospital was she had bites on my legs, felt like was reported like the bites that I had on my legs, it was kind of similar to what Kendall had. Had Miss Weed told you any of that about why she was in the hospital?
No, sir.
And I asked her, how long were you in the hospital? She said I had to look back over the records, and says that she could forward all that to me. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
You see how I asked, is there anything that Miss Weed can email me her hospital records? Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
Have we ever received her hospital records from that stay?
No, we have not.
And then I asked her, that's fine, but just for now, though, do you know approximately how many days you stay in the hospital? And she said maybe about 15. You see that?
I do.
And then is your understanding, and then we'll get to our kind of background and outline, but have you was CPS involved in your life or in your children's life earlier this year?
Yes, sir.
And now, at the time that y'all had a hearing, actually for both of the hearings in front of Judge Arth, have you ever had the CPS records for that?
I have not.
And let me show you. Have we recently obtained, like in the last few weeks, obtained CPS records?
Yes, sir.
Is Petitioner's 26 some of those records that we obtained?
Yes, sir.
That offer Petitioner's 26?
26 is admitted.
So in front of the Judge Arth hearing, you knew CPS was involved, but did you know that the allegation for mom was that she was watching television and a picture popped up on TV of OV and PP, being the perpetrator? PP thought mom had a mental health episode. Mom saw them on Netflix or Amazon Prime, and that the child denied abuse. Did you know that was actually how mom was describing the situation until you got these CPS records and I took her deposition like 30 days ago? Did you know any of that?
I did not know that was how the allegation was made.
And did you know that it was made this way too, that mom was accusing, and the PP, do you understand this to be Mr. Morgan?
Yes, I do.
That she accused Mr. Morgan, the 12-year-old and the 5-year-old. And
No.
her saying that did you know any of that?
No, the CPS officer told me that there was an allegation made that Kendall had been molested, but I did not know until we received this that there was an allegation that Case was molested as well.
Did you know that according to Mr. Morgan, he thought that mom could be on heroin or methamphetamines? Did you know that had actually been alleged?
Objection.
Yes.
May I object?
What is your stated objection?
Where is this information coming from? This is from the CPS investigation report itself? From
Ye-
CPS?
We are currently in the investigation report, yes.
Okay. I've not seen this.
Let me ask Mr. Gilbreth, have you given this information in any way to Ms. Weed before showing it here today?
Yes, ma'am. It's been produced, and as well as, I believe it's in our pretrial disclosures. I have to look to see if we got these within 30 days, but she should have these.
Disagree with that. I've never seen this document.
Maybe find for me, Mr. Gilbreth, have your staff find for me the email or however you sent it to Ms. Weed.
Oh, well, we'll certainly email it to her right now as well, in
Yes.
its inbox.
Yeah,
So-
I think given the recency of some of these documents, I understand. I want to see them. We want to see them, Ms. Weed.
I would like
And
to be able to review them. I apologize for interrupting.
No, I think I would like to see when they sent them to you and make sure that you would have had a chance to review them and make sure that you had a chance to review them. Maybe we go somewhere else until we can sort of verify that.
Right. That's what I was going to suggest. And again, to the extent that, right, make sure she has them, I'll do something else with Mr. Weed right now.
All right, thank you.
So Mr. Weed, can you tell me how old you are?
35 years old.
And what do you do? What have you previously done for work?
Project manager for a real estate development, typically multifamily.
Are you currently employed?
No, I've transitioned to a different company, which starts on the actual start date's on the 2nd.
Of 2024, is that right?
Yes, sir.
As part of preparing for this, did you prepare a proposed disposition of issues with my office?
Yes.
And is Petitioner's Exhibit 1 that proposed disposition of issues? Is that right, Mr. Weed?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and these were filed on December 4th of 2023. So I'd offer Petitioner's 1.
1 is admitted.
And did you prepare at the time, did you have any income when we filed your proposed support decision,
No.
other than
Yes.
unemployment and VA benefits?
Yes.
And did you prepare a budget, a proposed support decision, and file that as part of your pre-trials?
Yes, we did.
Okay. Offer Petitioner's Exhibit 2.
2 is admitted.
Yeah, just so we have by way of background, when did you serve in the military?
From 2008 to 2012,
In what branch?
United States Marine Corps.
And so the job that you're going to be working at, can you describe the job that starts in January of next year?
Yes, sir. To be a regional manager for all the Planet Fitnesses and all the Crunch Fitnesses that are being built and developed in the Texas Oklahoma region.
And so will that be based out of where is it that you currently live?
In Cedar Park.
And will that job be based out of near your Cedar Park residence?
It is. It's a remote position, and then once a week fly to a location and walk the project and then fly back.
Is it fly back the same day or is it stay overnight?
It's fly back the same day. Typically, if there's I'm not saying there's an emergency that I wouldn't have to stay overnight. But yes, it's set up to be where you go and visit the project during the day and then come back in the evening.
And then other than that one that travel the day of and coming back that day, everything else remote for the job?
Yes, sir.
And how are you going to be compensated for that?
W-2.
And what's your income going to be?
It'll be 110,000.
And will there be any bonuses or anything like that?
There is a bonus structure, a profit sharing structure, and then French benefits, a 401k.
And prior to the transition to this job, how much were you making at your previous job? What were you doing and how much were you making?
I was project manager, managing urban infill, high density multifamily. My base salary was 150. Then I had allowances of another $700 a month. So I mean, it was 160,000 plus bonuses.
Oh, and just for the record, since the local rules require, it is Petitioner's Exhibit 3, the payment summary of your unemployment benefits that support the budget that's Petitioner's Exhibit 2. Is that right?
Yes.
Offer Petitioner's 3.
3 is also admitted.
2 kiddos, is that right?
Yes.
Do you have any other children other than Kendall and Case?
I do have yes, I do. Not biologically, but I do.
Well, so talk to us about that child.
But my 4-month-old, when I met Alana, she was pregnant. So I've been around since, before she was even showing, and was there when he was born, Bear was born, and I've been there, every day for him. So he's a son.
Okay. Even though just because it makes a legal difference, but biologically speaking, Bear's not your child, correct?
No,
Well, is that correct?
biologically speaking, you're correct.
And just for the record, you also live with this individual with Alana, is that right?
Yes.
And that's Alana Tanner, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, are there pictures? Is these pictures, which is Petitioner's exhibit 4, did you actually just show Kendall, Case, and the baby and you?
Yes, sir.
And same in this picture shows Miss Tanner, the children, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, offer Petitioner's 4.
4 is admitted.
And can you describe Case I'm sorry, let's start with Kendall. How would you describe Kendall?
I think Kendall is very high functioning, and with that, high emotion. She's very put together, very mature for her age, very in tune with what's going on, very aware. And just really intelligent and witty.
Where does she go to school?
She goes.
And how's her attendance been?
Her attendance has been good. She had missed a day because we had to get her to therapy. She did go and attend a University of Texas law seminar, so she missed time for that, and one other day for a doctor's appointment.
And how's she just emotionally doing, grade-wise doing in her current school?
She's doing really well. I mean, she's doing a lot better than she was emotionally. She says that she's happier than she's ever been. She feels safe, supported. She often, reflects on that time period prior to the divorce when, she was doing extracurricular activities, going to school. There was structure, and she talks about how she missed those days, and now that she's in choir, has guitar lessons lined up, and getting ready to start swim. She's really excited. She loves her school. She is making friends. She's really coming out of her shell. I think she's doing a lot better.
And does she see a counselor?
She does.
And so talk to me, when did she first start seeing a counselor? Well, first of all, what's the name of the counselor?
Her name is Taryn, and it's Austin Trauma Center.
And how long has she been going there?
She's been going there for about 6 weeks now. It's 6 weeks. She was going to a different therapist that she wasn't really feeling like she was being heard, and so she was seeing this other therapist maybe 2 weeks prior to that. So 6 weeks with Taryn.
And so who found the prior therapist?
I did. I found both of the therapists.
Okay. And who was taking her to her prior therapist?
I was.
And then who's taking her to her current therapist?
I am.
And I think you may have said it, but I apologize because I didn't catch it. How often does she go into the current therapist?
Once a week.
Is that something you plan on continuing?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, sir.
Why is that?
Because of the trauma that she's been through. I mean, she can really put a smile on and be happy, but when she's experienced the instability and the not knowing what direction she's going in or where she's going to go to school, or if she's going to just load up in the car and leave, it really brought her some insecurity, and she didn't feel like she was functioning at a high level within the instability and within that type of environment. So
can you describe Case for us?
Yes, Case is he's a good kid, 6. He's really struggling to integrate, with his friends, because I think he has also some insecurities about not being at the same level academically. You know what I mean? Like for example, I to describe Case, I was like, hey, if I could teach you one thing, so I'm like, what would you want me to teach you? He's like, the alphabet song. And so he's constantly talking about he wants to learn how to read, and I think that he doesn't feel confident in his ability to read count. And so he gets really worked up and, one thing that I've noticed about Case is that he gets kind of mentally defeated when asked to do a task, and then I'll walk up and I'll see him like upset and ask him what's going on, Case. He's like, I don't know what part of the counter to put this on. And so really just working with him to try to do, he signed up to it's not necessarily tutoring, but it's extra additional education on Tuesdays and Thursdays, where they really hone in on reading skills and math skills and doing things to try to build his confidence, because he's a great kid. He's smart. He's really insightful. And if you sit down and you talk to him, you know what I mean? Like, he goes into depth on issues and really reads situations a lot better, but he has a hard time articulating, his emotions. And he kind of shuts down when he gets shy. So
On the tutoring thing that you have going for, is that something that you pay for?
yes, sir.
How much is that? Just curious.
It's like $150 a week, I think, $75 a session.
And with regards to all the extracurricular activities that Kindle that you talked about, are those all extracurricular activities that you've signed her up for?
Yes, sir.
And are you paying for all those?
Yes, sir.
Now, we've talked sort of through the counselors and stuff that the kids have been with you. Really, how long has it been that Kindle's been living with you?
It started really in September, and it would be, Carrie didn't pick her up or something, and then her choir teacher called me. It would be like, Carrie didn't show up to the exchange after Labor Day weekend, so the kids stayed with me. Then actually the day after, so Labor Day was Monday. She didn't show up to the exchange Monday evening, so I took Kindle to school on Tuesday. Tuesday evening, she had choir practice. She called me, and from her teacher's phone, and they had called Carrie. Carrie hadn't answered, and so they asked if I could come pick her up. So I would say really in September, halfway through September, she was really with me quite a bit, and then full time in October.
And then Case with you full time since October, other than the time period before that 1 week before
The
Thanksgiving.
10th, yes, sir. Yeah.
But point of my question being, have you continued to pay your child support all during that time,
Yes.
including December's payments?
Yes, sir.
And does Case see a counselor?
He does.
Who is Case see?
He sees a guy named Jason.
And is Jason with a group or on his own?
No, on his own.
And who found Jason?
I did.
And how often does Case go see Jason?
He sees him every 2 weeks.
And do you think Case needs to continue on in counseling?
He does. And the other thing I like about Jason is that if Case has a hard day at school, him and Jason have a deal where they, Case might hop in the truck and say like, hey, can we call Jason? And so we'll call Jason, and Case will be like, hey, I got really upset about this. This happened at school, and this is how I handled it. And then Jason kind of positively reinforces them and praises them for, having safe hands or, taking a step back and identifying the emotion or whatever they're working on. Case likes to kind of check in. And so even though he only sees them every other week, I definitely think that the relationship over the phone is important. And I think they both need to continue their therapy for a long time.
By the way, are the kids covered by health insurance?
They have some like Medicare. There's VA health insurance. I can get a Champ VA, but they're not enrolled in that because I don't have I'm not the sole conservator or whatever it is, I think is. And so anyway, I've been to the VA, have the paperwork, sent it to Carrie. There's been some email exchange, years, you know what I mean, of that she's had the information, but hasn't necessarily enrolled in Champ VA. So, but all these therapists and stuff, okay, pay out of pocket.
And do you pay for them?
Yes.
And so Case Elementary, is that right?
Yes.
And so how's he doing?
He's doing much better. We did what was called like a soft handoff with the counselor. So we coordinated the counselor, talked to Miss Carroll talked to the counselor I took Case up there the day before he started, met with Mr. Matt, the principal. We walked the school. He showed Case all of the different rooms, all the classrooms. He met the new counselor. Got to see the sensory room. This is where they take children when they need to be refocused or they need to take some time out and calm down and go back into class. So he kind of knew what he was walking into the next day when he actually started, and he felt more, I would say, like part of the class, part of the community. He's there every day. He's there early, so he's got to know his friends. He's got at Sycamore Springs, he never came home and said I have a friend or whatever. This kid, but now he's got a buddy that they trade. They actually got in trouble for trading Pokemon cards, which I was like, just glad that, don't do that, buddy. But, he's part of the tribe, I think, you know what I mean? And I think that brings a little bit of, comfort to him.
Has he missed any since transferring? Has he missed any days?
Yes, he missed 5 days from the 10th to the following court date when Carrie picked him up.
Right. So I should have asked a better question. So other than, because Miss Weed picked him up from elementary on what day?
It was the 10th, November 10th.
And did he go to school at all the remainder of that week?
No, sir.
I'm sorry, the remainder of that week. That was a Friday. So the following week, 13th, 14th, and the 15th, or the 16th, did he go to school?
No, sir.
Yeah, then once he was back with you. So during the times that he's been with you, though, has he been to school every single day?
Yes.
Has he been to school on time every single day?
Yes.
Did Miss Weed, by the way, know during this time, and we'll go through the details more in a bit, but when she picked him up from and then didn't take him to school the following week, did she let you know that he wasn't going to school or where he was at or anything?
Not at all.
And
No,
this
sir.
was after a hearing in front of Judge Arth, where Judge Arth had said everybody needs to stay where they're living. Had you received from Miss Weed where she was living at that time?
Not at that time, no, sir.
When did you first find out during this time in November of this year? When did you first find out where Miss Weed was living?
And it wasn't until not this past hearing, but the hearing before, and I can't necessarily recall the date, but it was after we had case back, and they, the judge, we said Carrie to pick one of the next 3 weekends, and she had put down an address, and it was Matt's, the man that she said molested the children.
What did she, by the way, on Mr. Morgan, then I want to go back and start talking about what the circumstances were at the time of the divorce or after the divorce. What did she testify in front of Judge Arth about what her intentions were with Mr. Morgan back in April of this year?
To get away from him completely, to get the kids away from him.
Objection. Do you have transcripts to infer that was the statement made?
Yes, we do have transcripts.
Hold on. They don't need to talk. Mr. Gilbreth.
We don't have the full transcript. He can testify as far as the party opponent, what she said, and but I can also move on to.
Yeah, I'll sustain that objection. I'm going to find that objection well founded. I'll sustain it, and you can move on to another question. Thank you.
So y'all got divorced in what year?
2019, 2020.
In kind of, we can all read the order and everything, and I'll represent to you that the order is filed on July 30th of 2020. We can all read it, but just what was the setup for your possession at the time that y'all got divorced?
It was a step-up plan. It involved, months of some FaceTime visits, and then kind of like, going to Conroe 4 hours, doing that, like day trips with them, and then going on to full standard possession, or having them for the first, third, fifth weekend of each month.
And where was everybody living at the time? Where are you living? Where was Miss Weed living?
I was living in Austin, and she was in Montgomery.
Was Miss Weed working at the time?
Not to my knowledge.
Based on what she's told you, what employment has she had since the divorce, if any?
She said that she worked for her cousin, and her cousin's husband had they had a couple different businesses, tow trucks, and she was sales or something. I'm not really sure, but I knew that she was somewhat employed by her cousin.
And from what time period?
I don't know how long after she got there that she was working for her cousin, but I know that when she left to go to Montgomery, that's what she was doing. She was moving into one of her cousin's properties, and it was my understanding that she was going to go to work for her cousin.
And so where have you lived? So timeline for Mr. Weed, where have you lived since the divorce back in 2020?
In the Austin area, at 809's, Henry's Middle School in the new HEB that they built there. And I did go to Corpus for a brief period, about maybe 3 to 5 months, to do a project. And then I spent some time in Dallas.
When was the time in Dallas?
Time in Dallas was right before. It's actually, I was in Dallas when this whole thing started. And so I would say September of 22. And then I came back and was kind of just traveling back and forth between Dallas and Austin from, I would say, March, so 6 months, and then March to June.
Now, when this lawsuit got started, it got filed in December 8th of 2021. Do you recall that there was both a motion for enforcement filed by you and the same day a petition to modify the parent-child relationship filed? Do you recall that?
Yes.
And the petition to modify at that time was just asking for a standard possession order and being able to attend family therapy with Kendall. Is that right?
Yes.
Speaking about the enforcement, though, just briefly, were you having difficulties at that time as far as your possession and access with the children?
Yes, I was denied possession and access for about 9 months.
And so talk us, we don't need to do too much detail on it, but sort of talk through us what was going on as far as possession and access for the kids during that time period.
It just ceased. All communication ceased. I wasn't able to talk to him, wasn't able to see him. And so I filed a motion to enforce, and it took 9 months to finally get resolution. And I can go into what the judge said and what happened. But
well, don't tell me what the judge said, but did y'all eventually have a hearing? I think it was in front of Judge Livingston.
Yes, sir.
And then there's temporary orders put in place as far as possession and access during that time. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And just we can all read them, but just generally, what were the temporary orders in place?
The temporary orders that were in place were for me to drive to Conroe every other weekend for, I think it was for 2 months, and then spend 6 hours with them on Saturday. So every other Saturday I drove to Conroe, picked them up, hung out with them. And then after that period, it would go back to every other weekend meeting in Brenham to pick up the children and then take them back to Austin. That was Friday. And then on Sunday evening at 6, meet at Scoops in Brenham to return back to Miss Weed.
And how'd that possession go? So that gets put in place April 2022. How did that possession schedule go?
It went okay for a while.
And did it take us okay through 2022 and into early 2023 as far as people following court orders? Have you seen the kids?
It was fine until in March of spring break, right after spring break of 23.
And so what happened in March? By the way, I guess just during this time period, though, after Judge Livingston puts her order in place until March of 2023, what's your relationship like with the kids? What are y'all doing on visits? Can you describe that to us?
Yeah, every time I had them, we were going to do something fun. You know what I mean? But I think we did, every theme park that we could. But it was good. I mean, it was fine. I mean, I felt like my relationship with them was good. They were having a good time. They looked forward to seeing me. I look forward to seeing them. It was everything was great. And then in March,
what happened in March of 2023?
Kendall had made a comment to me that when I had him over to spring break, that she hadn't been in school, for in March, like she wasn't going to school, and I kind of thought it was a little bit weird, and so at the exchange, I asked Carrie what was up with that, and she just kind of like minimized or brushed it off, like no big deal, and then that was I didn't hear from them, or when it came time for the next exchange, I texted, hey, are we still meeting up here tomorrow? And there was nothing, no response. And then she just didn't show up. And that's when it went into April, and the CPS called me and said, have you heard these allegations? You know what I mean? It was alleged that your daughter was, and, at that point I was coordinating with CPS trying to locate her. And it just kind of spiraled out of control. She was at a shelter. The kids had shingles. I think there were people at the CPS reports, that there were several CPS reports that were opened during this period of time between when we went in and saw Judge Arth in March of 23.
Had she, by the way, told you before that she was living with this gentleman named Matthew Morgan?
No, she didn't tell me that she had moved back in with him. At the time, she had moved out and was living at her cousin Stephanie's, and then was evicted. And then I guess that's when she went back to Matt.
Based on what you've learned from her, how many different places has Miss Weed lived since the divorce in 2020? Or if you could list them,
Seven.
Yeah, if you could list them.
So she left and went and moved in at her cousin Stephanie's condo. Then she left and moved back in with where she moved in with Matt. Then she moved back into the condo. And when was evicted, moved back in with Matt. And then moved to Austin. Was at they were an old boss's mom. And then some people put her up in an Airbnb. And then she moved back to Conroe when they moved back to Conroe and moved back in with Matt.
Were you aware during that? So y'all have a hearing in March of 2023. We talked about this CPS records you didn't have. Were you aware of your children going to the hospital or a doctor's appointment or going to the hospital during periods of possession with mom?
No, sir.
Let me show you, as part of mom's deposition, which I took about 30 days ago, were you aware that I asked her to send me a list of all the various hospital appointments for her and for the kids? Did you know
Yes.
that? And you recognize Petitioner's 31, which is what Ms. Weed sent us. As far as hospital visits, and I think she also provided me communications regarding case and counseling. Is that right? Is that correct, Mr. Weed?
Can you ask your question again? I'm sorry. I don't.
Yeah, this is the document. Petitioner's 31 is what we got from Ms. Weed after her deposition. Is that right?
I did. To be honest, I hadn't seen this.
That's fine. I'd offer Petitioner's 31.
31 is admitted.
And we talked about Ms. Weed in her deposition saying she'd give hospital records, but to be clear, have you received any hospital records from any of these visits that Ms. Weed lists for herself on Petitioner's Exhibit 31?
No, sir.
Any records from, after she said she'd provide them, any records from Kendall's visits?
No, sir.
Any records for Case's visits?
No, sir.
Had you heard, by the way, looking at Petitioner's 37, school records you also got recently too, is that what as well? Is that true as well?
Yes.
Had you heard before from mom that Case had been hospitalized in April 2023 for sensation that something is biting his brain?
No, sir.
Had you heard stuff like that from the kids before?
No.
So what was, you have a hearing in March of 2023. I think we've referenced it. It's in the court file where the court said there wasn't enough evidence regarding flipping custody on temporary orders. And who was representing you at that time, by the way?
Brooke Ward.
And then so after that hearing, how did possession go? So the summer of 2023, how was essentially from the hearing in front of Judge Arth in 2023 moving forward until the school year?
I mean, I had the my expanded summer. We had a really good time. She, from there, she didn't miss any exchanges. Very consistently late to them, but she didn't really miss any. There was a few times that there were some disagreements about where we were supposed to meet, but I would say all in all, it was fine. The problem was that between the orders, it was more of her when she started to not show up or not pick them up from the exchanges. That was the issue on in that situation.
And then so what happened? There's another. I started representing you in September, and there's another request. Well, first of all, when I started representing you in September, did we start writing and start talking about final trial dates with mom's lawyer at that time?
Yes.
Then what came up while we're doing that and trying to set for a final trial? What came up that led you to decide to ask for temporary orders again?
Oh, we had to get a TRO in the summer, and that's really how I was able to see him, because I hadn't couldn't get a hold of Carrie, couldn't get to the kids, and so we filed an emergency restraining order, and it was granted, and then that's kind of how we ended up in Judge Arce on I guess the temporary to that.
Well, let's get our timeline right. I think we're confusing some issues. There is a writ for habeas that you had to file in June, back when Miss Ward was representing you. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Prior to that writ, the habeas corpus, there was a TRO, and then she wouldn't relinquish custody, And so we did file for the Latin term that you just named.
Right. The writ of habeas, but okay. But then we started, possession started back up. We go into the school year. I start representing you. We're asking for final trial dates. And then was there a school attendance issue that led us to, even while asking for final trial dates, ask for temporary orders again?
Yes, there was school attendance issues. There was Kendall raising awareness to me that, you know, she was uncomfortable and felt unsafe, and constantly, you know, she said that wasn't being picked up. She said that there wasn't food in the house, that the Dripping Springs was giving her a bag of snacks to take home to eat because they weren't getting fed. And none of this stuff is being communicated with me that there's an issue with those types of things, except from the kids. And so, based on the attendance, based on the information that I was getting from the children, we filed the TRO.
Well, let's use our language correct. You asked for temporary orders. Is that
Sorry,
right?
temporary orders. Yeah,
it's fine. You had mentioned this, but before that hearing, what had happened as far as you talked about this when we said how long has Kendall been with you, but what happened during this time period before the Judge Arth hearing with Kendall and the choir teacher calling?
He said it was starting to become like a habit that she wasn't being picked up, or she'd be picked up really late or at the wrong time. And so, you know, Kendall didn't really feel good about it and was embarrassed. And so I went and picked her up. The choir teacher called, said, "Hey, we've tried to get a hold of Carrie. It's been an hour. You know, that choir practice has been over. It's just Kendall and I here. And can you come pick up Kendall?" I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." So I jumped in my truck and I went down there and picked up Kendall. And it wasn't until that was about 7 o'clock. I got there about 7:30, and you know, we didn't hear from Carrie until maybe like 9:30 at night. She messaged me on Family Wizard and said, "Hey, did you pick up Kendall?" And at that point, Kendall really opened up about how often this type of thing was starting to happen.
Did you know? Let me show you Petitioner 6, for example, the attendance records that are in their part of the Dripping Springs that are already in evidence. So I'd offer Petitioner 6. Did you know at the time that she had already missed 14 days of school?
That was, yes, sir. She was telling me that she was missing a lot of school, that Carrie wasn't waking up. She would go and ask Carrie to take her to school, and that Carrie wouldn't get up and take her some days, or want to take her to the hospital. And then there was one whole week that Carrie just didn't take them. And I'm not really sure what was the situation surrounding that, but it was starting to become a problem. And
the prior year, did you know what her it's marked as Petitioner's 42, which is some emails in the records about Kendall's attendance, and I'd offer Petitioner's 42. So you have the hearing in front of Judge Arth. What was the prior year, though? What was Kendall's attendance like the prior year? We have here where she's missing 17 days. Just go where I'm at.
From March, I know that she did not attend school from March of 23. So obviously before the spring semester, you know, hit its midway point, and till the end of the year, and we went in and talked to Judge Arth, and Judge Arth was like, "You better have those kids in school tomorrow." And they still missed several days. I think they went one day, and then she didn't put them back and didn't take them back to school. So effectively from actually there was also Jake, because I needed her to take a STAR test, that we did file some sort of emergency, because I was able to grab her and get her enrolled at least one day in Leander ISD so she could take the STAR test. That was required in 7th grade. And then after that, Judge Arth said that was on the emergency. And
Objection. Do we have any type of timeline as to like how this can,
I'm sorry, that's not a proper objection when you made it. And so I'll have to overrule that objection. But if we want to be more specific on time, Mr. Gilbert, I think it'd be helpful to the court. But going forward, let's proceed that way.
Right. So I guess talking about, October 5th is the hearing in front of Judge Arth. We talked about it some, but what happened since October 5th as far as the kids where they were staying after the Judge Arth hearing?
so Judge Arth said that Carrie could come get the kids, that she was granted, you know what I mean, primary custody, that she had custody of the children, and she didn't come pick them up that day. And then took him to school. She didn't go to pick up Case that day. So I went and picked up Case. When Kendall, she had choir, Carrie went in, and there was, she was ended up being escorted out because she was in Kendall's choir class yelling and whatnot, and Kendall still had an hour. She picked up Kendall that next day and took her straight back to my house and dropped her off. And
What day are we at?
the day after the Judge Arth hearing.
Okay, so we're on
So-
October 6th now, right?
Yes, October 6th.
And then so what happened next with regard to the kids?
I had him like a whole week before that, and then she was granted, the ability to be able to pick him up, and she never did. She actually picked up Kendall and dropped her off at my house. Didn't pick him up the 5th. Didn't pick up Case on the 6th. Picked up Kendall on the 6th, and drove her straight over to my house and dropped her off. And they've been with me full time ever since then.
Other than that week before Thanksgiving?
Other than the November 10th to I think the 16th or the 17th.
So talk to me October, the month of October, what's going on? We talked about some with the counselor, but what are you doing? Let's start about with Case. In Case's school, what are you doing the month of October?
The month of October, I was informed of his, I found out about the absence, found out about his behaviors. So I went and met with the principals, went and met with the counselors, went and met with even the head counselor at the district, and then the mental, the special testing. And I signed immediately that document that Ms. Carroll was talking about in order to have him start the evaluation process. And we sat down and we came up with a plan, and I agreed to make myself available, to go to class with him, to observe his behaviors, for us to work on stuff at home. So we would sit down, we would talk through Case's emotions, how we did that day. A lot of times I would sit down at the desk with him as he was working through his math and stuff to see how he interacted with other kids, because what I was seeing and what I was hearing at school, the way he was acting is not how he was acting at home. At home it was hard to imagine that he was being violent like this at school, because he wasn't violent at home. And, I was able to observe that. We were able to put a plan in place together, the same types of things that they were teaching him at school. The tactics I was trying to implement at home. We had a workbook that he would do. We'd sit down in Miss Carroll's office. I mean, it was usually when I would pick him up, I'd go in and sit down, and we kind of go over his progress. And we were really trying to map out what his triggers were and identify him at home versus at school. And but it was at least every day, in some form or fashion, helping Case try to, because he couldn't be in the classroom, so he wasn't learning. He was constantly being removed from the classroom. So trying to get his emotions in check, that way he could attend class.
By the way, let me show you what's marked as Petitioner's 15. Is this a Our Family Wizard message you got from Miss Weed after actually the same day of Judge Arth's hearing, saying that she's dropping Kendall off because you already have a case and I have a few, I assume that's supposed to mean things to take care of. Is that the message that you got?
Yes.
Offer Petitioner's 15.
15 is admitted.
And then what's going on with Kendall during this month?
The same type of thing. I mean, Kendall's at this point doesn't want to be at home. She's feeling unsafe. We give her a cell phone, that way she could call me if she wasn't dropped off or if she wasn't picked up. Carrie would take the cell phone from her and she'd be upset. She'd go to the counselor's office, which I think, like Logan said, that her Kendall's counselor is going to be here in a little while. But I was talking to her on a pretty regular basis, and Kendall was struggling and she wanted to be with me, and so it was challenging. She was having a really difficult time. She was struggling, and at one point she said that she was going to. So I know that she was really hurting.
So during this time, are you talking to Miss Weed about whether or not she wants to have any FaceTime or anything with the kids?
No. Yes, sir. I was asking her if she wanted to have FaceTime. She was not making it to FaceTime. I mean, she wasn't coordinating any time to talk. If she wanted to go to therapy with Kendall to try to work on the relationship, she asked who Kendall's individual therapist was, and I gave her that information. It was in My Family Wizard, but I don't think she ever scheduled any type of therapy between Kendall and her. She never elected a weekend to want to see the kids and make an effort to come out and see them. When she did call, it was upsetting Kendall. I begged her to call Case. If you look at My Family Wizard, I have probably 10 messages to her asking her to please call Case. Like, he needs to hear from you. He misses you. And I think, maybe she called once or twice, and it was maybe 3 weeks after she had left.
And just showing you, did you print because y'all been using our family wizard since earlier this year, back in May of 2023, is that right?
Yes.
And did you go ahead and pull a report for all y'all's communication all the way through December 13th in our family
Yes.
wizard of petitioners 44? Is that right, Mr. Weed?
Yes, sir.
Okay, offer petitioners 44.
44 is admitted.
Okay, so then let's talk about so we go through October, they're with you, and then did you find out on November 10th that mom was, well, I guess first of all, we talked about through the counselor where the kids moved from Sycamore to where they're currently at.
Yes.
And talk to me about was there a time that you found out that mom then went to go pick up the kids on November 10th of this year?
Yes, I got a call from the principal at Case's school, and he said, "I just want to let you know that Carrie came in and picked up Case, and that we're concerned about it, and we think that she's probably going to the middle school to get Kendall after this. So we called the police. The police were there. It was kind of a scene. Kendall was embarrassed. Kendall didn't want to go, refused to go. I wasn't there. There was a lot of yelling. I was on the phone with one of the police officers. But we had no prior notification. It was just out of nowhere after, pretty much like half of September, October, November. I mean, with Case not knowing if his mom was going to be there or not, and kind of transitioning out of that and into a more, he knew who was going to take him to school. He knew who was going to pick him up. He knew, kind of what his routine was. And no, she didn't coordinate. She didn't give us any type of notification. Just showed up at the school and yanked him out and was gone for 6 days. Tried to grab Kendall, and Kendall refused to go.
Any idea at this time? Did you have any idea where she was living?
No, I had no idea.
And we went and asked for a temporary restraining order, asking that the judge, it was Judge Connor, who's due to court, order that the schools not be changed. And did Judge Connor grant that temporary restraining order?
He did.
And then you sort of heard me talk about it in the opening statement, but then we were set for our de novo on November 16th. Up until that point, any idea where Case was or about whether or not he was in school?
No, I had no idea what. So during that period where she picked him up,
Right.
yeah, I had no idea where they were. If he was in school or not. If she had disenrolled him, I mean, I had no idea.
Okay, and then we had we talked to Judge Meachum on November 16th. We moved the hearing to November 27th, where we had the temporary orders set at the same time. And did you get Case? You already had Kendall. Did you get Case back on November 16th?
Yes.
And is that when you found out that Miss Weed was living with Mr. Morgan?
Yes.
And so how was Case? How was Case when you got him back in your house on November 16th?
He was a little bit distraught. Said that he said that they slept in the car. Said he had to sleep in a hotel. He was saying the hotels aren't safe. The mom's car broke, and then that they went to Mr. Matt's house. And I mean, he was upset. I mean, he was genuinely upset. He said that he wanted to go to school. I mean, he wants to learn how to read. That mommy doesn't take him to school.
So then technically there'd be an exchange at the end of Thanksgiving before our hearing on the 27th. So technically it'd be on November 26th, mom get Case back for the end of your Thanksgiving break. Because under the divorce decree, this would be your Thanksgiving. Is that right?
That's right. Yes, sir.
Did mom even ask for them back on the 26th before our hearing on the 27th?
No.
And had she FaceTime? When is Case's birthday?
Case's birthday is on the 20th.
20th of what month?
It's the 20th of November.
And had mom asked to FaceTime with him for his birthday?
She did.
Did she get the day right?
It was no. She was 2 days prior, 3 days prior. And sent a message on my family wizard asking if she could talk to him on his birthday, and one of the scheduled calls we did, and yeah, it was she had it off by a couple days.
Give me 1 second. By the way, when she did FaceTime with him, how was she behaving on that call?
Kendall said that it was that she recognized the place, that it was a bar. She really was kind of, she was with Mr. Morgan, and Kendall didn't really feel comfortable, you know, talking to her.
Let me go back to my exhibits. Then going to the Our Family Wizard messages, which is Petitioner's 40. You see here where mom on the 17th, 3 days before, she's wishing the happiest of birthday and kisses and hugs. You see that?
Yes, sir. I am.
And that was that's what you're referencing when you say
Yes.
The 17th, when his birthday is actually the 20th.
On the 20th.
Okay, so we kind of talked about an opening, but then we're up at the courthouse on November 27th. We spend all day there, and then we're told to report on the 28th. And did Miss Weed appear for November 28th in front of Judge Hathcock?
No, sir.
And then did you testify in front of Judge Hathcock on that day?
I did.
And then after that testimony, did the Judge Hathcock enter the interim orders that I'm showing that are part of the court's file?
Yes.
Now, you see here where it says that Miss Weed may pick one weekend for visitation before December 18th. You see that?
Yes, sir.
Has Miss Weed asked to see asked to see Case at all?
No.
And have there been any FaceTimes? Have y'all offered FaceTimes?
Yes.
And have those always happened? By the way, looking at Our Family Wizard reports, do they always happen at times that you've offered?
No, we set some times in place twice a week, and very, very consistently, I have to message her and ask her, like, are you going to call? And then she might call or she might not, but it might be an hour and a half later, like right before putting the kids to bed, but never within, 10, 15 minutes of when the scheduled call is.
By the way, you have, Miss Weed mentioned it in her opening, you have what's called a drug patch. Is that right?
No, not anymore. I did.
Right. And was that as part of probation?
Yes, sir.
And so tell us how that works.
So you have a sweat patch on, and it monitors any drugs that you might take over like a 24-hour period. It's a continuously monitoring type of drug test. You go in every 2 weeks, they take it off and they put another one on, and they send that one to the lab for testing. And so I had that from March until about a month ago, and never had a negative or negative testing or negative. It was never positive.
I mean, obviously, you understand your probation. You'd be in jail if you had a positive, if you had removed it. Is that right?
Yes.
And then it was removed because essentially you completed that. It was no longer required. Is that fair to say? I want to talk to you then, just moving forward with the kids. Let's sort of go back to your proposed disposition of issues. First off, everything that you're asking for with the court, do you think that everything you're asking for in your proposed disposition of issues is in your children's best interest?
I do. Yes, sir.
Are you asking that Miss Weed pay you child support?
No, I'm not.
And are you saying that you would figure, if allowed, that you enroll, that you'd have the kids and you'd cover their health insurance?
Absolutely.
So talk to me about, as far as decisions for psychological and psychiatric decisions, why do you think that you should make those decisions for, let's start with Kendall.
I feel like because, to be blunt, Carrie had them for a long period of time. If whether Matt sexually molested Kendall or didn't molest Kendall, the fact that there was alleged sexual abuse on my daughter and a 6-month time window passed that she still had primary possession of them, and she didn't take the time or think it was important or necessary to get her into some sort of counseling or therapy. It's absolutely, it's just disappointing. And so I have no confidence in her ability to, and I mean, it sounds so harsh, but if something like that happens, or you're alleging something like that happens, I think that it should be almost instantly. You need to take your kid and get them help and get them to a therapist. And the first chance that I could, I got her enrolled in therapy. And I think that I would be more capable and more helpful and supportive for Kendall and helping her work through some of her issues. And that's why I think I should have that decision-making ability. Does
the issue of topic of Matthew Morgan, has that come up with Kendall since he's been with you the last couple of months?
Yes.
Is she distressed when she talks to you about it?
She's distressed that she says that her mother asked her to lie and say that Mr. Morgan touched her so that way.
This hearsay.
It is hearsay, and so I'm going to sustain that.
Yeah, just don't tell me what she said specifically when she talks about the topic of Mr. Morgan. Just how is she behaving? What do you observe as far as her observations?
Her body language changes. She kind of starts to kind of slump and like looks down at the ground and her feet. She looks ashamed a little bit. Sad.
What is so I think you said it some, but just, what is your commitment to Judge Meachum if you're in charge of counseling or psychological decisions for your kids? What is your plan for that?
My plan is to continue to keep them in individual counseling for a long time. You know, I mean, this is, I think something like what they've been through, they're going to need a therapist or somebody to talk to for a long time. I also even, family counseling of some type would also be a suggestion. But yeah, I'm committed to making sure that they have a therapist to talk to.
And why do you say family counseling?
Because I think that Kendall really does need to do. I think Carrie and Kendall should really do a family therapy. I mean, I really think that if they're going to mend that relationship, then they need to go speak to a therapist together. And I do want Kendall to have a relationship with Carrie. I'm not here saying that I don't want that, but when we're talking about therapy and we're talking about mental health, right? Like it's important that she has relationships and people that she can count on and people that as many people that love her as possible around her. And so it's important for her, for one, to have a therapist. That way she can express herself and have tools to be able to ground herself when she's beginning to feel overwhelmed. But I think that her mending the relationship with Carrie is going to take therapy and it's going to take time. And I hope that, Carrie would definitely do the make the time for the therapy and be there and be on time. But I think that would be really helpful for Kendall in the way that she's struggling.
What do either one of the kids have any psychiatric decisions as far as you're aware that would need being like psychiatric medication? Anybody recommending that you're aware that the kids need any type of psychiatric intervention?
No, sir.
And then what would your plan be for educational decisions, starting with Kendall? What do you think needs to be done with Kendall's education?
I mean, I think that I should definitely be in charge of making sure that, that I have the ability to make those decisions of where she goes to school. That way, from the time she was in kindergarten, the second semester until, maybe fifth grade when I left, she went to Lake Travis, went to the same school, second half of kindergarten through the time period that I left, and then went to Montgomery. So I think that's important for them to have stability. I think it's important for them to have structure. So, I want to keep them in the same schools, you know what I mean? All the way through the time and point in which they graduate. But, I want to make sure that they actually get to school and that they get the education, they get tutorials, you know what I mean? When Case can't, he feels like he's struggling and he's having an emotional, he's developing insecurities because he feels like he doesn't have the confidence because he can't read or keep up in class. And it's causing these outbursts where he'd rather get in trouble and move out to the sensory room where he can get one-on-one time with a counselor instead of have to sit in that class and endure not being able to write his name when the other kids can write their name. I want to be able to provide that here, man. You're just as smart as everybody else, man. So if that takes extra counseling and extra, twice a week, then I want to be able to provide that to him and make sure that he's able to attend those things. Because I promise you, I will make sure that he's there and I'll make sure he gets that extra help and that he becomes more confident so he can be in class and stay in class and do what's best for him.
If the school recommends or requires an individual education program or a 504 plan, what are your thoughts on that?
I've already signed the paperwork for the 504 plan for him to get the testing. I signed it when I was at when they were at Dripping Springs. I've already signed it and sent it in for I think any help that he can get or anybody that can talk to him and has any idea that or can provide any resources or help, I'm 100% about it. So I've already, to answer your question, yeah, I've signed that paperwork.
What are your thoughts, I guess, taking each child individually, starting with Case? What are your thoughts on what possession needs to be in place between if the judge grants your request and they live with you primarily? What is your thoughts on possession between Case and mom?
I think that it should start with, I think it'd be after everything that's going on, I don't think that just, some sort of standard possession schedule would be fair for the kids, for them to be with us for 4 months and then to return to carry for a 2-week period or every other weekend or whatever it is right off the bat. I don't think is necessarily good for the kids, safe for the kids, just based on what, they've told me and what Kendall's told me. And so either supervised visits with case, you know what I mean, for a while, or, some way that I know that he's not going to sleep in a car or a hotel or at Matt Morgan's. And I don't, no school days for sure. I don't think it's I think we can look at the data and see that getting them to school is not necessarily a priority of hers. But I'm open to a lot of different things. Jay, to answer your question, I would say like really the things I feel the most strongly about, if I had to pick 2, would be like no school days and nowhere near staying around that.
By the way, I think we said it, but maybe we were talking about before the Judge Hathcock hearing. After the Judge Hathcock hearing, was Mr. Morgan also on FaceTime calls?
Yes.
When did that happen?
The very first one.
The very first one after the Judge Hathcock hearing?
Yes. And again last week.
Yeah. So let's talk about last week. Were you there in the room when that happened?
Yes.
So don't tell me what the kids said, but what did Miss Weed say?
She said, "Hi, why don't you say hi to Matt? You want to say hi to Matt?"
Objection. You have a request to play for this?
I'm sorry, what is your evidentiary objection?
That there is no evidence to prove this, to back this claim?
That is not a proper evidentiary objection, so I'm going to overrule it.
And were both kids there, Mr. Weed?
Yes, sir.
And don't tell me what Kendall said, but how did Kendall react?
She got up and walked off. She walked out of me.
What are your thoughts about possession and access between mom? And we talked about family therapy. What are your thoughts on possession and access between mom and Kendall right now?
I think that Kendall should be able to choose what she wants to do. I don't think that forcing her into possession and access with Carrie before any sort of therapy is that's not right with Kendall. I mean, I personally don't think that it's right to force Kendall to go and spend time around Carrie before Carrie's made an attempt to meet with Kendall in therapy, and at least they talk about things. I know that she's 13, but I think that she feels very strongly about certain things and she's upset about certain things. And I think that it may not take her long to be able to talk them out, but until she feels heard, I don't think that she should be forced to go spend time and away from home when she doesn't feel safe doing that right now.
What is your hope that where we eventually land as far as the relationship between Miss Weed and Kendall?
I mean, I hope that they're able to mend things and have a strong relationship like they have had in the past. And I definitely think that's important.
And then you have in your proposed disposition of issues. I guess I should ask, any intention of moving? Do you have any intention of moving right now from the area of the state that you live in?
No.
And it's in your proposed disposition. You've spoken to it already, but you have a request that Mr. Morgan not have any contact with the children. Is that right?
Yes.
And why are you making that request?
Because Carrie alleged that the 2 children, and then said that because CPS cleared it, then it must be okay. And that doesn't make sense to me. So from what I understand, and she never told me that Mr. Morgan sent kids, but the fact that she made these allegations is serious enough for me that I don't think they should be around him. If she felt strongly enough to make those accusations and call the police, and then second, to take Kendall and then put Kendall back around him is just like demoralizing. It's emotionally, mentally, it's not right.
Then I would pass the witness.